That's a beautiful bird. What a great way to. Do you have birds?
My window's open.
What bird is singing at 8 p.m.?
That's a good question. We have a lot of Blue Jays and Cardinals
Oh,
in our yard. It's actually pretty dope.
yesterday you live in West Hartford?
Newington.
Oh, Newington. Yeah, I'm in Cromwell, and yesterday I've never seen this in my life before. I was out in the shed. We have a nice big square backyard right off a busy main street in Cromwell, and this never seen it in my life. A hawk just came down. I don't know what it killed. It had something there, but I turned away from the shed and there was this like dragon in my backyard. And like you see them in the sky, but until you see one up close, it's massive.
They're huge.
And it was right next to it. There was a blue jay. And I thought, that's a dinosaur.
Run, you fool. Yeah.
Thank you.
We just had one like circling us the other day. And when I say we, I mean me and the dude that doesn't leave my music room. His name is Remy, and like he just sleeps by my side while I'm teaching. But yeah, I swear a hawk was circling him because the hawk knew that this guy, he's 12. He's not going to do anything.
Yeah, he's like, God, it's today the day.
It's like, this guy's like 100 pounds, but I'm pretty sure the bird's going to take him.
So thank you everybody for joining me. My guest this evening is a guy named Mike Day. I have a whole bunch of notes and I'm going to try to say them in one cohesive thought. Mike is an incredible musician and a songwriter. Mike has really blended the two worlds of music business and I would say introverted musician expressive. Can that all be one word? Is that okay with you, Mike?
I liked it. I don't know if I can write it down, but
I don't know what it is either. But like I was saying before I hit the record button, I wanted Mike to join because he has a very unique story and a very impressive story when it comes to sharing his music with the world. He's won awards. He's been in different, very successful projects. I think he's a very successful musician, and we are going to talk to him. So thank you very much for joining me tonight.
thank you for having me. It's an honor, man.
Oh.
No.
So let's start off with just kind of what you do right now, and then we will rewind back to how you got there. I know you're in a project right now, Among the Acres,
Yes.
and you guys have some very impressive music on Spotify. This is for anybody that saw the previous episode with Dan Hardington, that was a lot of classical and jazz music. The music that, and while you've played a bit of that stuff, this is more, I would say, I want to be careful what I say here because I know you indie folk like to split hairs. It's like neo, it's like neo field rock. What would you call it?
I've never heard of that.
I don't know what. It's like
People ask us, we say it's like indie Americana. Yeah.
It's good music and very much like those bands.
It's pop,
Well, in the big picture, it's pop. But I remember listening to a band. Have you heard of them? Midlake? Do you know them?
No.
They're really cool. I believe
Right
they're
now.
on this. I believe they're. Yeah. I'll send you a link. They're on. I forget what label they're on, but they're very much
You
like.
still get signed to labels?
Yeah. They're like a band. I like to think of them as like Death Cab, but not depressed, and talking
Okay.
about like being farmers instead. So like, it's how do you describe that kind of music? It's just it's music, and it's I don't know why I'm holding a comb. We're gonna edit all of this out. I'm gonna put a big blur. So I met you many years ago.
Yes.
Um, you were you were do you want to just take it away? I've been doing a lot of talking, and I'm afraid most people are going to shy away from this.
So yeah, so I was working at a Starbucks on LaSalle Road in West Hartford, and during my breaks, I used to go into LaSalle Music and play guitar. And one of my favorite human beings that I've ever met in my entire life, Mr. Les Robertson, asked me to start teaching, and I like laughed at him. I was like, I don't know how to teach. I've never taught before in my life. And one day I went in and he was like, I have a student for you. Just be here this day, this time. And he did that about 5 times. So I ended up having about one day where I was like, hey, Starbucks, I can't work I'm gonna teach. And I really learned how to teach while teaching these young kids. Luckily, he was getting me like younger students, like half-hour long students, so I could really like, start off with the very basics and build up like my teaching resume.
Right.
But I met you when another teacher, unfortunately was fired.
Yes.
And he had about 50 students a week, and the program really liked me. So they just basically were like, do you want to try to take over the student base? And at that time, I probably had about 20 students, but I took over about 30, I think. So I went from like a part-time music teacher to a full-time music teacher. And I've never looked back. I don't work at the store anymore, but yeah, you were one of the students, right? Or did you come back later?
I came back. I think I was like trying to find myself. What would you say?
You said no to me.
I did say no to you. Yeah. And a lot happened between that time. And I'll tell you, just to give people some backstory, the people that aren't listening other than my mom and dad, which is no one, LaSalle Music, you remember, Mike, LaSalle Music is the store, or was the store. They still have one in East Hartford, I believe. It was in West Hartford Center, and it was a small mom and pop, if you will, music store, although it wasn't that family anymore. It's this other guy, Mark something. Piece of garbage. He's
Mark Satan.
He's probably dead. No, probably not, because those guys never die.
Right. No, yeah.
Those people are terrorizing people into their 90s.
He's still swindling somebody.
But the people that worked in the music store were generally good people. There were some really great people, and there were some people that were not so good. But you find that in sort of also the general music field. So this was a very guitar heavy store. They had a lot of really cool. I remember they had all those cool Vox modeling amps, and
they had the
Strats.
Oh God, I loved working there. The acoustics were just like Taylor's and Martin's. We used to have the I don't want to say lesser, but yeah, the lesser model of the PRSs.
Because I'm thinking of the acoustic guitars, like the Takaminis and the Jasmines.
Yeah, so
but
we had all those.
Yeah, it was a cool store, and Les was a great person there. And so somebody had left. It was a guitar teacher that deserves a whole nother.
Yeah, that's another channel.
That's another channel. I really connected with him, and I'll tell you, I learned some things that I don't think I could have learned from anybody else from him.
He's a great teacher and a great guitarist. Just wasn't
great guitarist. He had some really unfortunate things that happened to him, and then he chose to do. But he left, and then you took over, which is kind of how it works. Because I want to say when you started, fast forwarding, when I started working there, we were working side by side for a little bit. And then you had left. But so you took over, and then I didn't take lessons because I was like, oh, I had such a connection with this guy, I'm not ready.
Yeah.
And I eventually, he came to the house for a little bit for lessons, and then that fizzled out. I started studying with you, and you were very different. This guy before was very, like, I don't even know how to describe it. He was very like thoughtful and philosophical, and you were like, this is what you need, this is how to do it, do you want to do it or not? And I was kind of like, no, but that's I wasn't ready.
You were always a good student. What are you talking about?
Oh,
you came to me already really like proficient at the instrument, so like I think I remember just kind of being like, slow down, you play really fast. Let's slow down your playing.
And I do remember that. So you taught at that place, and you were talking about learning how to teach. I can relate to that. I spent a lot of time thinking about how that happens in a lesson room, one-on-one. Can you talk about that? What does that mean to you when you had to learn how to teach?
Oh yeah. Well, it showed me a lot about my playing style. Like, I mean, as you know, like I studied classical guitar. I at like 13, I took lessons out of a music store. with a rock guitarist. And then one day I showed up and he was playing classical guitar, and I was like, that's way cooler than what I do. Show me some of that.
Where was that?
Southington Music Shop, which I think might still be there.
It is. It is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
I wonder who the teacher was. Do you remember?
Yes. Wait. Lon. His name was Lon.
That name sounds really familiar.
And dude, he had like 6 piercings. I don't know why I brought that up. Well, you know why I brought that up? Because eventually, like, I don't anymore. Now I'm like an old married man, but I had like 6 piercings.
You do. It's just under the.
But I remember.
I want to be like Lon.
I remember my brother one time making a joke, or my brother or sister just making a joke about how I became my guitar teacher. And I was like, no, I didn't. And I looked in the mirror and I was like, oh my God.
I think we all do.
It's okay.
We all become our guitar teachers. This is very much very similar to my guitar teacher's basement, but his is finished. Mine isn't.
I don't even have a basement, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I remember freaking out, like being absolutely terrified that I was going to be teaching someone the instrument. And the minute I got in the room, and you remember that room very well, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
The student sat down, and luckily it was like an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
I immediately was able to communicate the what I thought would be the most important aspects for an 8-year-old to learn, which was going to be like technique, just how to hold the instrument. And then it helped me connect with the instrument so much, because all of a sudden I started paying so much more attention to my left hand as I was explaining it to a student. And even just like the small stuff about holding the instrument and really feeling it against your chest and your arm, and that kind of stuff just started clicking for me. Which obviously through performing I had already been doing, but I just never expressed it in my own words. And I think that was the biggest thing for me. I'd always heard my teachers telling me, but I'd never said it myself. And that was huge for me. And then on top of that, there's the like Hal Leonard books and stuff like that. So I just
Hal Leonard, I'm going to be honest, like so I stopped teaching private guitar lessons out of a music store 3 years ago. And that was 10 years of teaching in that building. 10 years of teaching in that building.
Yeah.
And I would always do Hal Leonard 1. If you don't have any experience, I don't care how old you are, I don't care what you want to play, except for classical guitar. Hal Leonard 1. That is a great book.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've always wanted to do my own, but I just don't see the point, because Hal Leonard 1 gets it done. Yeah. So what am I going to add to that? Like, I don't like how late he gets to chords. I mean, chords so much earlier than that, but
I thought about that too. I like that you think that you could do that after the first 2 strings. Hal Leonard.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like they should be on chords way sooner than that. But no, that book also helped me become a teacher, because like I was literally reading it to the kids, and as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, this has a lesson plan. Thank God.
Yeah. What I noticed when I was doing a lot of that teaching is it really does, and you said this in different words, it really forces you to examine the things, or not examine, it forces you to be aware of the things that you're good at and not good at. And you have to decide if you want to examine those or not. And sometimes you can skip by it, but then at the end of the day, you're like, oh, if I don't understand this, then am I really doing a good job helping this person?
Absolutely. And there's still things like I'm not a shredder. I always say I never will be. I know obviously if I hit the practice room, I'll be able to improve upon my skills, but there are things that I can teach that I won't go on stage and perform. But as long as I can teach them, that's what's keeping me, keeping like the students rolling in.
So you left LaSalle Music before it got bought out by Music and Arts, right?
They bought it, and then I left because I didn't want to work for Guitar Center.
Okay. So you left. So that was probably, I want to say that was a couple years after I started. That was maybe like 2 or 3 years after I started teaching there. So you left, you took a whole bunch of your kids with you and maintained a pretty, when I say your kids, I'm talking about the memories.
Yes.
I mean, who's watching this, Jameson?
No, we're good. I don't think I was under contract at that point anyway, so it's fine.
Regardless of how many students elected to study with you after, I do know that in the West Hartford area, you had busy enough and full enough schedule to both pay your bills,
Yes.
and then also pursue one of my favorite projects. And I say this not to flatter you or to show off, but one of my favorite like Connecticut projects, Little Ugly. That happened around the same time. So let's talk about the teaching stuff first, and then we'll get to who you are as a musician. So you left an establishment that was giving you students, but also taking a pretty reasonable cut, a pretty sizable cut.
Too big. Yeah.
And then you leave, you get much more money, but you have to do a whole lot of stuff on your own. What was that like?
Yeah. So I think cause I'd been in bands before that, and then Little Ugly was already started before I had left. Little Ugly kind of actually prepared me for that, because Little Ugly taught me that, you know, music is a business. And if I wanted to succeed, I had a lot of work that I was going to do all by myself. So when I took the students privately, I immediately knew that this was going to be 100% like, you know, if I was only teaching 40 students a week, there were going to be another 10 to 20 hours a week that I was focusing on getting more students and filling all these spots and everything like that. So at first it was really, really intimidating, but the great thing about having had, you know, 50 students a week at LaSalle Music was that my name had spread through the schools and throughout the town. So I've really been lucky. Like I know I run a business where I am teaching, and I have about 40 students a week. But honestly, I've never taken an ad out. I've been very lucky. It's been word of mouth. I think part of that is just, you know, I do love the instrument. I do love teaching. But obviously I connect with the students so much.
Sure.
I think it's like my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You also, you know, you say you're lucky, but you also hit the market at a very unique time. If you looking for a guitar teacher now, we either look online, or probably the easiest thing is to just jump on Facebook and ask people. By the way, I've seen your name a whole bunch of times whenever I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. I'll put my name in for that student. And 8 people are like, Michael Day has a beard. He's great. Michael Day teaches my son. He's handsome. Like, just like all this.
No, yeah. So that's the thing. I think I guess I view as lucky.
But that happened way before all of that stuff, because when you left, so we're talking about 2010, 11. That was really before all of that stuff was so centralized online. And West Hartford's a small, affluent town. You really did get your name out there, because if they were coming to me privately, it's after they had left you and taken a break.
Yeah, you know, one thing I did early on, I do remember telling students, if you got me a new student to sign up, who signed up for a month, you got a free lesson.
Oh, wow.
And I do remember parents taking advantage of that.
You get Mike Day stickers.
Yeah. You get a beard sticker, right?
No, you had a soul patch then, didn't you?
Dude, I've gone through so much, and now this is just so much easier.
It looks great. It looks great.
I appreciate it. Tell that to my wife. She wants it short and just stubbly, right? She's sleeping.
So let's talk about Little Ugly. So this is not your first band, but your first band, I think, that took you to some real serious places within this area.
Yeah, it was the first band that I fronted, and I wrote songs for. I was the sole songwriter for.
So Little Ugly is this small folk quartet trio, keeps going back and forth. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Can we talk about instrumentation and personnel as deep or shallow as you'd like to?
Yeah, we so started off as a trio. Me and actually 2 other teachers from LaSalle Music.
Right.
Casey on the upright bass, who to this day is still like a brother to me.
You said it with a French accent, though?
So he doesn't know this, but I don't know how to say his last name, even though he's like my brother. I think he would say Cormier. I always say Cormier.
Right. So shouldn't it be Day, since you guys are brothers?
Cormier. Oh.
That would just make it easier.
He's always turned down my advances, so he's got a day.
What?
What? Um, yeah, Casey Cormier. I'll just say Cormier.
Yeah.
On the upright bass, and Sarah Larson on the violin. That's how the band really started, and we gigged like that for a while. Um,
And so
until
you were writing music.
yeah,
And what was that music? What was that early Little Ugly music like?
um, I don't I did not find myself as a songwriter yet. I just really started trying, so it was all over the place. I was really big into bands like the Decemberists, Muse, Radiohead. So I was kind of trying to throw, and I was still studying classical guitar, so I was trying to throw all that into like one pot. Uh,
Where were you studying classical?
that's a good question. So it started at Hart, and then I dropped out.
With
Uh,
who at Heart? Sorry.
at Hart, I was with Alan Spreestersbach
Hmm.
for a year, and I was just 18. For me, was not a smart enough age to.
No. To go to a conservatory.
It was a terrible idea. So I spent 1 year there, but I started a band, and then that band broke up. And that's when I started writing for Little Ugly. Was when that band had broken up. But yeah, we had songs that sounded like Muse, but on acoustic guitar, and then we had songs that sounded like Damien Rice, like an Irish, like we had so much like Irish folk influence. It was weird.
But your guitar parts were never, I mean, the way that you're talking about it sounds like you're just strumming chords and singing about your pain. You had some really complex riffs, right?
Yeah,
They were for mostly acoustic guitar. And when I say riffs for acoustic guitar, I mean things that had, you know, driving melodies, but then also kind of exploiting the richness of the steel string guitar.
yeah, for sure. At that point, I still identified as a guitarist, like solely. I was singing only because I was writing the lyrics and couldn't find somebody else to just sing them. And actually, at that point, my brother was writing a lot of the lyrics because the goal was for him to be the singer, but he had just started a family and stuff, and I wanted to gig nonstop, and he couldn't do it. So I was thrust into being the front man, as well as the guitarist. But at that point in my career, singing to me was a joke. Like I thought I was a horrible singer. I wrote everything based like with like I wanted us to like to be a guitar heavy band.
Yeah. So you have the trio, you're going around. What kind of gigs did you start off playing?
Anything, a whole lot of open mics, especially at like Southey's Pub in Hartford.
Oh my God. They're done.
Yeah, I know. I
They're
know.
done. That Sicilian pizza next door at Lena's, the crust was like this thick.
Oh, that was like my favorite.
It
That was
just
part of
was.
our pay. Yeah. Like we can get you $50 in pizza, and I was like, we're getting $50 on top of the pizza.
On top of the pizza?
Could we buy more pizza with the $50? So yeah, we're doing those open mics. There was a place in Middletown that was again like an open mic. Everything was open mic until those places started offering us gigs. But really, we didn't start getting offered lots of gigs until we got Nick Dickinson on the drums and percussion. I think it was Casey who was like, "Dude, you're writing like these heavier songs. We need a drummer." And I was so against it from the get-go. Like I wanted to be an acoustic trio for some reason. I just had this vision because I mean I don't want to toot my own horn, but at the time, bands like Mumford and Sons and all that stuff hadn't been around. So I kind of
Right.
I think I picked up on something that was about to happen with like these bands like the Lumineers and all that kind of stuff. But I wasn't writing anything like that. So I don't think Little Ugly was really a part of that scene until actually much later when we changed a lot of the members around. But once we got our drummer, really the music just made far more sense. Nick was really a good like songwriter's drummer. He heard
Yeah.
everything that I was doing, was able to kind of bring it all together and make it more cohesive.
And the interesting thing about that instrumentation too is that you have to understand that instrumentation. The guitar is such a complex instrument, and a lot of the time it's simplified, and that's not a bad thing. Songwriters like Damien Rice are, I mean, you don't listen to it for the guitar parts.
Right.
you listen to it for the poetry or the songwriting, or sometimes the chord progression, or sometimes it's catchy, or sometimes it just means something else that you can't quite express. But
Absolutely.
for you, you were doing a lot of chords and a lot of, I said, things that were just sort of idiomatic to the guitar. To have a violin on top of that to either present a melody, improvise, do something else, whatever, and then have an upright bass as opposed to an electric bass, or an electric acoustic, a hybrid bass. I remember hearing your instrumentation and just thinking, this is somebody that really understands what these instruments were supposed to do. And the adding of because Nick didn't play a full kit at first, is that correct?
Oh no, no, we were so mean to him. We told him
He's had one snare, right?
he had to stand while playing. Like he had like the bass drum and a snare and a hi hat, and then like he got this whole rig of cymbals that were hanging over his head.
Wow.
And we made him do that for like a year, I think, before he was like, "My back is killing me every gig. I'm playing a drum kit, so we're bringing a kid on stage." And I remember the first gig that he brought the kid on stage. Like I had never headbanged like that on stage before. I was just like, "Oh yeah."
That's great. So I'm just thinking of Nick. I haven't talked to him in a long time.
Oh, you probably talked to him sooner than I have.
Yeah.
That's what being in a rock band is like, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have some personnel changes, you move around, you eventually, where does the album come into all of this? Because I saw you guys a handful of times, and I think, rubbed shoulders with the band members enough where I kind of knew the style of music. I knew some of the songs. You guys were playing at venues like Arch Street. Did you do Infinity Hall with them?
We did Norfolk,
Norfolk.
but that was
So,
different lineup at that point.
so you got like pretty good, pretty high gigs. That sounds terrible. Pretty respectable gigs within Connecticut. I mean, the Norfolk Hall is kind of one of the big respectable venues in this area. I mean, unless you're going to go play the Meadows or something like that, like a big stadium. Like you made it pretty big with that band. And then what happened with the album? Because I know we had talked about a little bit of this, and you can be as cryptic as you like, but you cut an album, and the music on it is great, but it's not entirely the same music that you're gigging with.
So wait, sorry, you're talking about the first album or the second album? The second album is the one that can still be found online.
Oh, there's a first album.
Yeah, so I remember before we were talking about this actually when you asked me about from this point forward.
Right.
Yeah, the greatest guitar riff I ever wrote. So that
Yeah.
that record we recorded, but that was different. So the instrumentation on that was me, Casey, and Nick still, and then we had a pianist named Weezer. We didn't have a violinist at the point.
Wow, I completely forgot about Windsor. I did not do my homework, Mike. I'm sorry.
No worries, no worries.
I listened to the two albums and I thought I was versed
Dude,
in Mike Day folklore.
We went through 9 members.
Wow.
I couldn't imagine anybody remembering that except me.
Are you allowed to play the riff over a podcast?
I don't even know if I could remember it.
There's one that's like da 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 da. That one. So that kind of thing, like that's so perfect for an acoustic guitar because it's almost electric guitar. It's almost too heavy, but then you put it with an upright bass, a violin player, and a percussionist, and some deep as hell lyrics, and you get an incredible song.
That was a fun one. But yeah, so that was on a record, but we had a fight with management. We had a manager, and we kind of butted heads, and he owned the masters while I owned the songs, so that album was never allowed to be released. We released it. We sold it for like I think 5 shows. Some stuff happened.
Yeah.
And I ended up having like 200 CDs in my parents' basement for a decade.
Are they still there?
They might be.
We'll talk after this.
But the second one, Where the River's Born, that's the one.
That's the one I listened to.
Again, so all right, Windsor left. Then we got another violinist / singer / co-songwriter, which was the first time that ever happened, named Kaya Pazdursky. And then we went through like two other bass players. But that album, when Kaya joined, we kind of shifted gears. So that's what I was talking about before when I was saying like we weren't really a part of that whole Mumford and Sons Lumineers thing. When Kaya joined, I think we started kind of gearing a little bit towards that, kind of getting away from like the guitar heavy stuff and starting really focusing on like the songwriting aspect. Because she and I we clicked the second we started writing together.
Mm.
So yeah, that record, those songs were kind of like just like the brand new ones that we had just written, and we're like, let's just get these out to show people that we're trying to shift gears a bit.
What was that like, either the first time or the second time going into, I guess maybe the first time going into a recording studio, trying to communicate your ideas in a completely different format? And I guess I'll just add, for people that don't know what that's like, you get so good at performing a song and you know what that song feels like, you know what that song means, you know everything about that song, and you get into a recording studio. And I mean, I don't know if what your experience is like, but I've never had the experience where it's the same. It feels like you're playing a completely different song.
Yeah. I've been lucky enough to been like a studio musician for a lot of different bands, and then I obviously record my own music for a long time. The studio to me is, yeah, like you said, it's a whole nother ball game. I absolutely love it. For me, there are two different art forms. There's the live performance and then the record. Um, and I feel like just going to so many shows when I was younger, like I mentioned it before, but Radiohead's one of my biggest influences. And
Mm-hmm.
seeing, like listening to their albums and then seeing them live, at a young age, I realized that the studios where you can really do something completely different with the song. And I lost all, I guess, qualms about doing something in the studio and then thinking, oh, I can't play this live. This won't be on the song, so I can't do it in the studio.
Mm.
I don't believe in that. When I'm making a record, I have no problem laying down like 15 guitar tracks if each one of those tracks fits the song and just adds something, um, especially if it's just a lot of fun to play. Uh,
Yeah.
so I think with like the Little Ugly stuff, we kind of run a little bit of a budget, and you know we were young, not really knowing what we're doing. So at that point, you're kind of just at the you just listen to your producer and the engineer and trust them.
Did you have, I think I was at, it was either at, so now I don't want to go into the personnel of this. The person that produced your album, was that also your manager?
The first one that's not out, yes. The,
Okay, then we won't talk about that, because I was at a party with you, I think, for a friend of ours, a jazz sax friend of ours.
yeah, you were at
That
that party.
he had an album release party, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Is that what
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
thinking
yeah.
of? And
Yep, that's,
Veslaki was there, I think, because he was part
yep,
of that crew.
yep.
Yeah. So that studio that we're talking about, I recorded in that studio once for one of his songs, and the studio was nice.
Yeah.
Nice
So
room.
that place we never did an album in, actually. That we did some demos there, but he got us into a studio in New Haven that I can't remember the name. Um, there's actually some like live DVDs floating around of us at that
Nice.
studio. And then the other one we did at that place in Hartford, Tapeworks.
Tapeworks. I of actually the guy Ben Bishop on the first episode, he interned there,
Oh, where?
and so I got to hang out there a number of times and mess
Nice.
with all of their stuff. Really nice place.
Yeah, yeah, really nice guys. One of our buddies like was one of the head engineers there,
Oh,
so he
cool.
got us in on the weekends when they were closed for a discounted rate.
So so you released the first album. You're still playing shows, and in terms of the shows, that kind of boosted you up. I think that's kind of where you got your first initial following as a band. In Connecticut, a lot of bands are great, but they don't really get the whole I need a following thing. So sometimes you see some really cool bands at places like the Space or even Webster. I haven't been there in like a billion years, but you see a really great band there, but they just don't they don't know how to attract people. You guys started to attract people.
Yeah, I think it was the personnel. I always say everything like I've been really lucky, but they all, a lot of the times we were on the same page as far as what we were presenting. And I've gotten a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? I guess like flack. Is that the word? Slack? Which one is it? No, slack is where people help like allow you to
They
do things.
give, yeah. Flack
Flack.
is they're throwing stuff at you.
Yeah, I've got a lot of flack over the years. Like Little Ugly won a bunch of awards, and we really use those to help push our brand.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of musicians hear me speak like that, and it gives them a bad taste in their mouth. They don't. To them, if I say things like that, it means it's not all about the music. But to me, I've always kind of laughed that off because everything is about the songs.
Right.
And I'm trying to get these songs to as many people as I possibly can. And for me, like, I do love recording, but I live for the stage. And if each new fan gets me closer to the next stage, then I'm going to push my brand as hard as I can.
Well, and you said earlier you learned at a young age that music is a business,
100%.
and there's nobody listening to your music, I don't think, that would say, "Oh, this is just fluff. Like this is just pop music." It's because it's not. It's complicated, and there's a lot going on, especially in the Little Ugly stuff. But you listen to that stuff, and it's evident that you do care about the music. I, for one, think you have to do that because you're right. If you're able to keep moving upward, you got to use everything you can. And sometimes awards can be shortcuts, or well, that I don't know if that's an appropriate word. It could be a way to, yeah, shortcut.
Yeah, it's just, well, I mean, it's just another accolade that is going to get your name on something that somebody
Yeah.
else is going to see and then come see you. Um, but yeah, I think, and over the years, I've been able to kind of hone those skills. And now with the band that I'm in, I think we all, being older musicians, we've all been in previous bands that have had a little bit of success. Uh, we're able to come together and see that through, I guess, a vision. I think with Little Ugly, one of the things that ended up happening was I had a vision, and it became like a little bit of tunnel vision. And it was like this is how we're doing this, or we're not doing it. And then eventually we weren't doing it.
Yeah. So Little Ugly kind of falls apart, whatever you want to call it. I didn't. I wasn't so. What's that?
Implodes.
I remember one thing that we won't mention,
Oh,
but I remember that things came to an end, and I think that's kind of when you and I weren't. I didn't really wasn't in your circle at the time, so I wasn't really close with you at the time because you had come back to Central, right? While I was there.
yeah, I think maybe I started that while the band was still together. But when I went to Central, I kept like I would go for a year, take a year off, go for a year. Like anytime we were on the road, I stopped going. I probably took like a decade to graduate from Central,
But you did it.
but I did it.
Yay. So Little Ugly's done. You have some great memories. You've learned some good lessons.
Absolutely.
Um, what's your takeaway? What's one of those takeaways before we move to the next chapter?
Oh boy. That's a good one. That's a good question. Um, oh man, which
Let's
one?
talk about you said there's a good lesson for musicians about management. Can we boil that down to something that's appropriate to share?
Yeah, just basically, always have a lawyer. Always have a lawyer reading over documents. That is, not your manager's lawyer and your lawyer. Always have two separate lawyers.
Mm.
Um, and take things for what they are. There's a lot of people. People are really good at. I'm trying to say this is like the PG-13 thing. Um, People are really good at telling you what they want to be able to do with you. You need to
Mm.
really realize what they can do. what their connections in the industry actually mean to you. It doesn't matter that someone's brother's cousin is, LeBron James's brother.
Right.
That doesn't mean anything when it comes to your music.
Do you know LeBron James?
Well, yeah, I was just hanging out with them. No, that'd be cool though.
Yeah. No, that's
That was such a weird way of saying all that,
no,
but
no, no.
we just basically had stars in our eyes, and it turned into nothing, unfortunately.
Yeah. And but also, you learn that's a piece of your life, that you can look on. Like you could say this about anything. That's a chapter of your life that you can read in your head, and
Yeah,
there's some really difficult, painful stuff in there, and then there's also some really wonderful stuff. I say this to myself all the time, whether it's music or my family. I wouldn't be able to enjoy the stuff now if some of those terrible things, whatever they are, hadn't happened in the past.
yeah, of course.
Um,
And just in case someone else listens, we had a second manager. His name was Chick McCabe, who was amazing. I just want to say that in case he's listening and he's like, "Why is this guy trashing me?"
what
First
did I
manager,
do?
not Chip. Chip was incredible.
So, so there was some time between when Little Ugly stopped and then your newest project began. I
Yes.
know there was some stuff in between. There was some stuff in your personal life, like you were going back to school. What was happening musically in that time?
Um, Almost nothing at first. So Little Ugly was supposed to record an album, and me and Kaya, we
A third
were.
album?
So the first two were like EPs. This was gonna be a full length. Our
Okay.
first, Nick had quit. We didn't really have a permanent bass player, so it was just gonna be Kaya and I. Um, but Kaya and I were actually seeing each other, and when we broke up, the band broke up.
You're the
And
bad boy of West Hartford.
what? um, so at that point, we had already found a producer to work with, and his name is Pat Gear. I think he lives in California now. He also works with Michael Manelli, who's a pop musician that I play guitar for. Um, he was like, "You have all these songs, let's do a solo record," which I was incredibly intimidated with, but I knew that I needed a break from gigging and from bandmates and everything like that, and to focus on my personal life. So I was like, "Yeah, let's do this, but let's not set dates on anything. Let's just do this really relaxed." So I recorded a solo album with him for like 2 years, I think, and we both just brought in like different musicians that I had met from either Connecticut or that he had known from high school and stuff like that. And he actually brought in my buddy Sean Lemke for drums, and this dude was a beast. Like I had never played with a drummer like this in my life, and did not feel worthy. And I remember Sean was like, "Yo, I really like your songs. Like this one reminds me of Elliott Smith. This one reminds me of Jeff Buckley." And he was just saying like the exact words that I'd always wanted to hear.
Yeah.
He was like, "Do you want to get together and jam? My band from New Orleans just broke up, and I'm back home." So I show up to his house, and he's got a guitar in his hand, and I was like, "What are you doing?" Like, I thought you wanted to jam. And then he plays me, I believe it was a song that's now on Among the Acres' first album, Eyes of Pain. And he sits there and sings and plays, and I was like, "Oh, so you have the voice of an angel.
Yeah.
Awesome." And that's when we both were like, let's start a band, but let's co-write and co-lead. And that's what became Among the Acres. But between that, yeah, I think I took like 2-3 years off and focused on a solo album that I have yet to release.
What is it in the process of? Or where is it in the process of
It's in the process of me just like me and Pat, we talk about it a lot. I held off for a long time because I use some of the songs for Among the Acres, and then also a lot of it is some of that old like Little Ugly stuff, heavy guitar stuff. It's a lot darker than the stuff that I tend to write now, or just heavier, I guess. So I kind of wasn't feeling it. Like my life changed. I met my wife. I started a new band. I got back on stage. So a lot of the songs didn't really mean as much anymore.
Mm.
But now, like 5 years later, and during all this, like the quarantine and stuff, I'm itching to release music. So actually, recently we've been talking about finishing those songs up, and I'm just gonna release one song at a time. But it's gonna be funny because a lot of the stuff I wrote, like I don't even know, like 6 years ago.
Do you ever hear? Are you a Weezer fan?
So
Like
Weezer?
Weezer, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Pinkerton is one of like my favorite albums of all time.
My wife is a incredible Weezer head.
That's awesome.
I don't know what they call them, but so I knew Pinkerton and Blue Album and
Yeah, those two are
some
just
of those. And she turned me on to these albums that Rivers wrote, these B sides. And I think there's two of them. I think it's in the, what is it called? I'm gonna find it right now.
yeah.
Rivers solo album. It's like in the shack or in the. That's a song. Back to the shack. Now my computer's not going to work because I'm on a call. God forbid. I'll tell you when it comes up. But there's some really great songs on there, and some of them sound like they would be songs from Pinkerton.
That's cool. I definitely gotta check that out.
And
Yeah, my bandmates always crack up.
Alone. It's called Alone. The home recordings.
Alone.
Yeah, the home recordings of Rivers.
I'm writing down all the stuff you said. I'm learning so much today.
But the reason I bring it up is that, you releasing that could be one of those things where you put it out there and you're like, yeah, this is a representation of who I was 6 years ago with this song and 2 years ago with this song and whatever
No,
it is.
absolutely. And I think a big part of it was those songs were kind of a snapshot in time that I didn't want to remember anymore. Like the ending of Little Ugly was heartbreaking for me. Like I thought I was done with the music scene. I didn't think that anybody would want to hear or listen to me anymore. I thought Little Ugly was kind of the best I was ever going to do. And then Among the Acres has been greeted with open arms. It's been surreal. Like I remember our first gig, going on stage and being announced and being greeted by the announcer with a big hug. I almost like cried right before we started our first song. I was just like, oh, okay, people do remember who I was.
Wow.
But now I'm more comfortable with what had happened in the past, and those songs don't. I'm not like resentful of them, which is weird. I was resentful of my own songs, and now I'm more at peace with it all. So I'm actually excited to release it. Like I said, I had. Oh man, Ben Dean, he's a violinist. He was in Caravan of Thieves. Isaac Young from No Mind. Sean from my band, Sean Lemke. Me, and John Caruso, who you know from LaSalle Music Companies. Pat, my producer on keys. The stuff, some of the stuff is epic. Like it almost reminds me of like Dave Matthews on steroids.
I would love to hear it. I would love to hear that. What's the difference in your roles now? Or in your role now, where when you were doing Little Ugly, you were writing a lot of the music, controlling a lot of the ground work, the stuff that was happening on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. What's your role like now? How are those two roles different?
I guess now I have. I don't want any of this to sound bad, like I'm saying anything bad about the old members I used to play with. But now I feel like I have a group that has a clear vision of what we all want as a community. And the role, like my role, I can actually take a step back and breathe. Whereas before I really couldn't because I was the booking agent. I was, just everything day to day, making sure we had enough merch, making sure everyone had the details for the gig was, what time to be there, and making sure that they replied to me so that I knew they had those details. I still have a little bit of that, but me and Sean, as the songwriters, we both went into this knowing that would be our role, and we really do a good job of splitting everything. And, we joke, but he's the band dad and I'm the band mom. Like we split everything evenly. but I'll still be the one that reaches out to the bass player or the drummer. Is just like, hey, I just want to let you know I love you, and you have to be there at 7. 7.
I like how even in these high caliber bands, the drummer is still drummer and bassist are still the ones that you're patronizing the most.
Oh my God.
So you're doing all of this. This is connected, but it's going to sound like it's out of left field. You're doing all of this stuff, Little Ugly, writing, going to school, while still maintaining jobs in the music field. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you never had to. Did you ever have to go back to a real job?
No.
And that's wonderful. That comes from hard work and some luck and actually just getting your name out there.
Yeah, no, that's I've been I keep saying lucky. I've been blessed. I've been a full-time musician since I started teaching at LaSalle Music. I can't complain.
Same here.
Good for you, man. I
It's
love it.
it's
I think it's a big part of it is putting a price or like a value on yourself as a musician. I think a lot of people undersell themselves, and that's why this industry can destroy you. I think if you go into this knowing that you are worth something because of what you've put into it, I think you could make this like a full-time thing. Like I'm
yeah.
sure Dan talked about, like Dan and I, we go to the same gym. So we
Still, because I don't think that's a good idea.
not right now, man. That's why you're shooting me and Dan from the chest up. We don't want you to see what's going on. But we he's a full-time musician, and he approaches it the opposite way to me. Like I load my days up with students, and then gigging with my band, and he loads his days up with he's constantly in something like off Broadway and stuff like that. Constantly, it's amazing hearing his schedule.
Yeah, it's really impressive. I guess the thing that non-musicians don't understand, because I mean you and I have talked and we've left out some of the juicy gossip, but the truth is that to be able to do all of this in a pretty small area, and to do it well and well enough where you don't have to go work at Whole Foods or go back to Starbucks or work for your family or do this or that. And I'm not saying, I mean, I don't know, maybe you had some help. I certainly had some help here and there. But what I'm saying is that to get to a place of recognition where there's such an emphasis on art, but people don't see the business side of it, that's something really special. I think you do deserve a pat on your back for that. I have a friend, his name is Brett Sandler. I don't know, you probably do.
Yeah. We both played with Andy Wakeman.
How do you know Andy Wakeman?
I played bass in his band for like a couple shows. Andy also did Little Ugly's website. I love Andy. What a sweetheart.
Andy, I met Andy at our mutual friend Ben's when they were up at UConn and those Walden apartments. And Andy and I would just find the stupidest things to just laugh about. And we would drive around, man, and yeah, we haven't been close in a long time, but Andy has one of those pieces in my heart.
I literally did like, I think a gig or two with him, and like still to this day, someone's like Andy Wakeman. I'm like, well, it's like the first time I heard the Beatles.
Yeah.
Sweetheart.
Andy's incredible. But so Brett, Brett, he's down in Nashville, and he's doing basically what you're doing on an enormous scale, where the risks are much higher and the rewards are a bit higher too. Where we were just talking, and he was saying, oh, he did this jam session where he was he plays keyboard, and the drummer was like Taylor Swift's drummer, and the guitarist was Missy Elliott's MD, and like all of this stuff. And it's so you won't see that stuff in Connecticut. We did have the Picaros in West Hartford. I think that's the highlight of Connecticut. But to be able to do all of this, I mean, it's impressive. I mean, I think you do deserve some recognition for that.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that. I will always like vouch for the Connecticut music scene. I think it's absolutely amazing. It's just, we don't have labels out here or managers out here that are really checking it out. But I mean, being surrounded by New York and Boston, and then having something like the Hart School of Music right at our doorstep is
Yeah.
incredible. And that's really what's helped not only with Little Ugly but also with Among the Acres. Like, Little Ugly was able to tour, so we were able to make a bigger name for ourselves by playing, up and down the East Coast. Um, Among the Acres, we've been playing Boston, New York, here, and then all of New England, and it's been huge for us. But also, the Connecticut scene has always been super welcoming. I do think with Little Ugly, there was a closer bond to the scene. I think the scene itself was closer than it is now. That might also be because I'm older and maybe I'm just not getting in with the younger crowds because I don't go out to the bars anymore. But
Hmm.
but yeah, no, I think you're looking at the bands that are around now, like West End Blend, and like there's just so many jam bands that are around right now that are absolutely phenomenal, and
Yeah.
they're all from right here. You can catch any one of them any night at our street tavern once we're allowed to go back outside.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I know we're winding down on time. If this wasn't happening right now, this quarantine, what would you and the band be doing?
Uh, we had we were booked pretty much throughout the whole summer.
What
Um,
does that tour look like? Is that a tour where you're gone for 2 days and then home for 5 days? What does that look like?
yeah, we don't call it touring. No, no, no. We try to do because we're in the process of recording our second full length album. We were doing like 4 gigs a month, so we would do like two in a weekend, take a weekend off, two the next weekend, take a weekend off. Um,
And where were those gigs? What did that look like? Because you're not doing open mics anymore.
yeah, we were gonna do Infinity Hall in Hartford. We had that booked with this band called the Alpaca Gnomes out of Bridgeport. They're
I've heard that
fantastic.
name. Yeah.
We had actually we still technically have it, but we got Black Bear Americana Festival coming up. That's in October. Hopefully, that's still happening. We
What's
had
it
a
called?
festival.
Black Bear Americana? That sounds
Yeah,
like the most hipster thing.
I was so pumped.
Yeah.
I was gonna dress exactly like this.
Yeah.
Uh,
In August, is that what you said?
I think that's in October actually.
Oh,
So
October. You would be sweating in that in August.
yeah, we had a music festival up in Maine booked that was canceled. Every brewery you could ever imagine. Like we're a brewery band. Breweries love us, and we love them.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I don't even know off the top of my head how many gigs we had to cancel because luckily, for most places, it was just understood that gigs were canceled.
Yeah.
There were a few though, like if again talking about the Hartford music scene, Hog River in
Sure.
Hartford, they had their Twang Thursdays,
Yeah.
which became like a
No good. No good market.
yeah, the Twang Thursdays became like my favorite local showcase, and they were really good to us. I think we were one of the first bands they had, but then they kept having us back, and hopefully they continue it. But I think April was supposed to be their final month, and we were supposed to be one of the last three bands to play,
You
but
mean for the year or like they're done?
they were gonna leave. I think.
Wow.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. Hopefully everybody knew about that, and I didn't just announce that.
Oh,
But
again, my mom and dad will not be going to CNBC with this
um,
information anytime soon. I've been like backhand complimenting them for all of these episodes, and they haven't said anything yet, so I don't think they're even listening.
that's awesome.
I haven't gotten a passive aggressive text from my dad yet, so I don't know.
All right, so yeah, we're about at the hour mark, so I'm gonna say, Dad, I'm really sorry the Red Sox aren't playing because I know that probably means you're not falling asleep on the couch. If he hears that, I'll know he actually listened. But yeah, we just had a lot of gigs that we had to cancel, and then we were gonna do like we're actually in the studio right now. We're still kind of social distancing. There's only five of us in the studio, so
Well, if it's a big studio, you can stand far apart.
it's a huge one. It's actually beautiful. Go sit recording in Massachusetts, gorgeous. But we're gonna come out there second full length, hopefully this summer, and we were gonna be doing a Kickstarter to promote that. But obviously, right now, we don't feel comfortable asking people for their money when the economy is like shut down. So
Right, right.
loss of gigs, no Kickstarter. This album's coming out of pocket. All right.
Well, and but if you're in the position to do that, meaning you guys know that you will be able to make that up when we can all go outside, then
Yeah.
that's something that you do.
Yeah.
Last couple questions. What would you say to somebody who is looking to create the network that you've created? How do you, I know there's, as musicians, sometimes we burn bridges or we do things that we wish we hadn't done, but let's go to the other side. What are some of the things that you would tell somebody to do in order to have these wonderful experiences?
Yeah. Um, Say yes when a musician wants to jam. Doesn't matter what they play or what they do. Say yes. You might find yourself in a situation where you're surrounded by people that you think are far superior to you, as far as players, but there's always going to be something that's unique about you. And if you're just going with a little bit of confidence and play, they're going to see it. So my advice to all my students and to whoever's listening is always say yes. And then if you don't find yourself in a situation to say yes, and this is the part I have to stress, if people aren't asking you, go out and ask others. If you hear someone else that plays an instrument, just be like, hey, let's play music together. Because what's the worst thing that happened? You spent your day playing music with somebody.
All right. I No, there's something worse that could happen. I tried to
So many
hang
things.
out. I tried to hang out with this one guy, and we got stuck. I didn't really want to hang out with him, and I was like, I should just do it. And this is a true story. I'm not gonna say his name. And we went and played music, and then it was like pretty clear that we were two different people. It was like whatever, but I drove, and then we got stuck on Route 2 coming back into Hartford, and we were stuck. Like we weren't fighting or anything, but it was just like, yep, this is really awkward, and like it's time to go, you know. And
Well,
yeah,
yeah, of course, there's so much worse. I was answering as a teacher. No,
no,
I found myself in being an actual member of a band that I was like, I didn't want to be in this band. How am I in this band right now?
oh God. Yeah. Wait till the episode with Brett comes out. We were in a really cool band. I think you did the Motown bands. You know
Yeah,
about that.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, you'll see. Um, but see, that's the difference between the projects I was in and the projects you are in and we're in, because we were good, but we didn't have what it took as a cohesive unit to go, okay, we're going to stop playing bars. We're going to play casinos. We're going to play places that we want to play.
Right.
We were saying yes so much. And not just that band, but other things, you know, you
Yeah.
say yes so much, and then you don't get the opportunity to say no. The only time I've gotten the opportunity to say no is a classical guitarist. And there's probably a whole bunch of things that have changed since then. That's one of the reasons why I stick with it.
Yeah. And I think again, Little Ugly like is we had the benefit of I had the benefit of being in that band for so long. Like I said, we had 9 members. We had a rotating cast. I obviously was the only original member left. Um, and at first, the answer was yes for everything. And then like we found ourselves gigging like, you know, 5 days in a week, all in Connecticut. We weren't playing to crowds. Like we were just playing to play. And then eventually that's when I started learning to be business savvy and
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
no and say yes to the gigs that we actually needed.
Last question for you, and this will be the hardest question to answer.
I'm ready.
You know, a lot of this stuff is people that want to understand your story need to go listen to your music. What does it take to develop that version of Mike Day that can access that songwriting potential, that emotional reflection? Because remember, I know you as the first batch of Little Ugly songs, and those were like extremely personal about who you were, about your family, things like that, right? So my question is, how do you develop and access those emotions, knowing when to contribute them to a song, knowing when to put them somewhere else? How do you see yourself as a developed songwriter?
Whoa.
Yeah. I just asked you like 20 questions,
I
all in one.
was gonna
So
ask, like, was that just one?
Well, whatever that means to you,
Yeah,
talk about it.
I think now my priorities have changed so much, and being like 25 compared to 35, I'm able to comprehend my emotions and my thoughts in a much more clear way, and I'm able to express multiple emotions as opposed to just like sadness and anger. um, so
No, that's all there is.
I think now, like, because of that, though, my like the songwriting is slowed down. With Little Ugly, I could probably write like 10 songs in a month. Now, I'd be happy if I wrote like 2 songs in 6 months. Um, my bandmates are the ones that push me to keep writing because my other songwriter comes out with like a song a day. It's ridiculous. But as far as like what to write about, like how do I know that usually is up to the song. Like we have a new song coming out about some struggles my wife and I went through recently trying to have a child. We've had 2 miscarriages, and I wrote about that struggle, and that song took a full year to finally finish because at first I couldn't stop crying when I wrote it, and then I just didn't think it was okay to sing about. And then once we finally did, we saw people connecting with it, and now it's like, it's me and the band's favorite song to play. Um,
Wow.
so I think the stories tell themselves really. If they're going to be something worth singing about, they tell themselves. But now, yeah, I think it's more just I stopped I stopped viewing myself as just a guitar player, and that was a big move for me. I really wanted. I found myself wanting to be a songwriter, and that really took a lot of pressure off what I do with my fingers, um, and allowed me to just kind of speak a little bit more. That was big. But then also having Sean allows me to actually shred. So Sean writes a song, I get to shred, and then when I write a song, it's my turn to just sit back and just play, and he shreds.
Those are some deep words. Do you have anything? We're gonna have to do another one of these sometime soon. Do you have anything that you want to promote? You can talk about it here, and then we'll put it in the notes at the bottom.
I just think this is awesome. I'm really proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
I remember you coming into that music room, and look where you are now, dude. I love it. So people, please check out Ben Tint. Dan Hardington's been on this. Some other guitarists, Ben, you should talk to Andy Sorensen. I think he's probably the
Yeah,
greatest guitarist in the Connecticut music scene. That kid's insane. Um,
we met a couple times through Isaac.
he's so good. It's like he makes me cry when he plays. Um, but no, to any guitarist out there listening, reach out to Ben. Have this conversation. This was so much fun. Thank you,
Thank,
Ben.
thank you so much. I'm gonna put the links to your music below, and that was Michael Day.
Check out Among the Acres.